It's Friday, February 7th, 2014, and this is the Product Mentor. Today we'll be joined by one of our mentors, speaker David Shoenberger, Product Innovation Specialist, a very fancy title, to lead a lesson, a conversation on go-to-market strategy. So for those of you joining us for the first time, we have, and you're probably joining us through the productmentor.com/live. The way it works is David will be talking. As you have questions, post to our Google Moderator channel, which is also on that page. And as your questions come up, I will jump in and pass on the questions to David, and David will do his best to answer as many of those questions as we can. And I, Jeremy Horn, also known as the Product Guy, will be moderating tonight. And with that all said, let me hand it over to David to introduce himself and to start his talk.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy, and welcome to everyone who's out there right now. I appreciate the opportunity. It's true. I am a product information or a product innovation specialist. I grew up in marketing. I went to business school, and I've been in product for the past 5 or 6 years. I started my product training at large companies like Lucent Technologies, American Express, and since the last 5 years or so, I've been mostly at startups. And different companies have different ways of doing product, and as you advance in your own career, you'll realize just how true those words are. What I'd like to do is to say that product is a new role for many companies, and it's very different. Even the same product role within a particular company is going to be very, very different. And so as long as you are aware of the differences and okay with it, you can have a wonderful career. I talk about sort of the ambiguity here just because not only are the jobs within product management or even within the same company a little bit different, but terminology you'll find is being used by different folks or understood by different folks in a slightly or perhaps significantly different way. So with no more to do, I'm going to try to bring in the presentation, and we're going to do a little bit of deck time here. So this is a go-to-market strategy presentation. I'm Dave Shoenberger. This is for the Product Mentor, and it's February 2014. When Jeremy first came to me and he said, let's talk about go-to-market strategy, I said, fine. And then I thought to myself, well, what is go-to-market strategy anyway? And to be quite honest, I had a definition, and it was pretty good, but it wasn't great. I was a little bit disappointed. So I asked some of my peers, several of whom have worked in either marketing or product management for years. And to be honest, I wasn't crazy about their answers either. So I went online and did a little bit of a search. This gentleman here is real. Bill Brown is a market consultant. He gets paid to help people do marketing, so I figured he'd know. His definition here, which you can read, coherent set of choices that align your people, process, products, premises, and partners, very alliterative, to deliver your brand promise, the desired experience, and tangible value. Now, I guess my one response to that is, what is go-to-market strategy? So I did another search. This one took me to Wikipedia. And this one sort of smells of marketing, and that's marketing. And that's probably as it should be. Who do we target? What will the portfolio be for these targeted customers? How much do we charge? How do we promote? And where will we promote? And I think actually that's getting a little bit more to the heart of it. But I'm also thinking to myself, I'm no longer a marketing executive. I'm a product management executive. I care about the product and making the product, getting it out to market, and making sure it's successful. So I think the definition that's going to be helpful to me, go-to-market, is going to be a little bit different than what some of my former marketing cohorts or brethren used to think. And so I say, what is go-to-market strategy for product people, people like us? Well, it's anything and everything that you've got to do to make sure you build the quote-unquote right product so that when you go to market, it sells and you get to keep your job. There's another great Jeremy out there. His name is Jeremy Kagan, C-A-G-A-N. And he's got a book that I'm going to talk about soon. But what he likes us to do is to not just come up with a product, but to discover a product. and this product has 3 attributes: usability, value, and feasibility. A usable product is one that you can use well. A valuable product, and it looks like that's spelt wrong, but it's actually not, is something that you use again and again gladly because it's helpful to you, and you may even pay for it. That's when you go from being a user to a customer in the eyes of a company. And then feasible. You have to make sure your uber talented tech team can actually make it, kind of sort of the way you and your UX team envision it. So that's what I have to say about go-to-market strategy for product people. By the way, I got permission from Jeremy to use a broader definition of go-to-market strategy because this is more interesting to me. So I'm going to take this and talk about not so much how to market a product, although I'll go into that towards the end, but really how to make sure your product is right, because that's something I think on everybody's mind. So let's take a look here. How do you build your product right? You start off with a strong development methodology. And you might say to yourself, well, geez, what are the methodologies out there now? And I'm glad you asked, because this next slide will take you there. This talks about what's happening in the world today vis-a-vis how products are getting developed. What I really like about product people is, you are all very honest. A lot of people would lie about their height, weight, and length on bodily parts, but not product people. A full 12.5%, and this was taken just a few short months ago, admitted to being fully waterfall, which is kind of tragic if you think about it. But it actually gets worse. If you move over to two big, gosh, what do you call those? Jeremy, what would you call those? You don't have to answer, but it would be great if you could. Are these 3D boxes? What are they?
I would call that a bar chart.
A bar chart. Okay, so if you look at the third bar, the red bar, you'll find that's pretty significant, but that's blended. So it's some waterfall and some agile. Agile everybody knows about because Ari gave an excellent presentation on this only a few months ago. But it means that fully, I'd say a third, maybe even half of the world is still either entirely or partially on waterfall. And that's not a good thing. So that's probably not the best product development methodology to use, but it's still quite popular today. But the bottom line is the rest of the world is mostly on agile, and that number is increasing with every passing day, or each passing day. All right, next slide. We're going to say avoid the waterfall. In fact, I tried to get a blurry picture to put up here so that you couldn't read exactly how to do waterfall, so you weren't even tempted. But this particular slide is interesting because it outlines why waterfall is not a really good way to go. Basically, you spend you spend weeks and weeks, or usually months and months, putting together MRDs and PRDs, and you have all of these requirements, and then you throw them over to development, and just the idea, the concept, the notion of throwing something over to development doesn't suggest a partnership, which is one of the biggest problems with waterfall. There was really a wall between the product people and the developers, and that's no way for successful products to be born. They may spend months or sometimes even years, if it's a big enterprise solution, doing their voodoo. And yeah, there will be some QA and unit testing and whatnot, but basically it's not until you introduce it into the market, go-to-market strategy, that you actually learn about how it's working. And sure, you can have beta testers and whatnot, but until you really get it out in the market, you don't know what's happening. And at that point, you've invested so much time and money that all of the changes that are often required, it's kind of a little bit of egg in the face at that point. It's almost too late. The money has been spent and the egg has been cracked, and it's really, really bad. And it also makes everyone on the team feel bad, and it often gets somebody fired, and it's just no fun at all. All right, so let's talk about other ways to do it. And you know what? I'm going to stop really quick and get a little picture of me for a second in case you forgot what I look like. And I'm going to say, hey, there's William. Hi, William, one of my mentees. I will say this. Because product people are the way they are, they think a lot, they worry about things. They're what I call highly functional OCD types. So I bet you own this book, which is The Lean Startup, and I bet you have Jeremy Kagan's book, if you're old enough, called Inspired. And here it is. And I'm not getting paid for this. You have Steve Blank's first book, 4 Steps to the Epiphany, and that was very good. And if you like that, you'll love his newest book that he wrote with Steve Dorff, and this is called The Startup Owner's Manual. That's a very good book, but it's very dense. And then finally, there's a book that's part of the Lean Startup that's really wonderful. It's called Running Lean. And I would say run, don't walk to your bookstore or just download it. This is Ash Maria, and I think he's just magnificent. So like if you learn nothing from this presentation, and you will, also go and get this book. Read it over the weekend. It's a quick read, but it's incredible, and I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. But I just
so people are now going to bookstores, you say? That's
yes. Did I really say bookstore? Yes. I actually went to the bookstore for it because I didn't want to wait, and as much as I love digital books, I wanted to be able to like put my pen into it. All right, let's get back to the deck.
Before you jump back, we have a question from let's see, from William. So let me hand over to William so that he can ask his question.
Hit me.
Thanks, Jeremy. Hi, David. While you were on the subject of what's disadvantageous about a waterfall product methodology, and because I always like to focus on the practical questions, is there anything you can say about getting a larger organization that you work in the context of to transition away from that sort of methodology? Or is the point that in this day and age we should just be avoiding those places as budding product people?
Well, there's a loaded question, and if memory serves, that's the kind of question you ask, William.
Quick caveat is I don't currently work in that situation, but
okay, good,
I have been in that situation, and probably a lot of people do and are curious to change it in some way.
Well, I know that situation well because I grew up in it myself, and you know, at the time it made a lot of sense. There weren't really better ways, really. I mean, it seems like based on the numbers that I showed you, up to possibly half of all companies out there are still doing either pure waterfall or blended waterfall. So I would say no. I'd say every different company is a different situation, and you know, you gotta pick your poisons wisely. But I would say don't become so dogmatic that the methodology that they employ be you know, what helps you or what determines where you go or don't go. But I will say that the spirit of Agile is something that is very important, and if the company hasn't embraced it, it's a red flag. It's a red flag. I don't know any perfect Agile firms out there, and the most progressive people I've met have said, you know, we're mostly Agile, but not completely. You know, I think that's a really good, honest answer. You know, as with any methodology, you take the best and you leave the rest, and you just grow, you just build upon it. And I'm actually going to show a couple of examples of where one individual, whose book I had recommended, took a little bit of Steve Blank and a little bit of Eric Ries and went in a different direction, and an absolutely beautiful one if you had asked me. So I'd say don't not join a company because they're Agile or not, but be a little bit careful in your determination. Okay, hang on a quick sec. I have 2 daughters, one of whom is just home from playing with their friend. Hey, I'm doing a live presentation, so I want you to wave quick to everybody so that they can see your hand. Okay, and don't tell your mom this, but I want you to go into the bedroom, watch TV, and don't come out until I get you. Okay?
No, she said, can I have a treat?
You can have a treat too, yes. Right now the answer is yes to almost everything. Okay, sorry about that.
As long as we can have some treats also.
Absolutely, yes. There'll be treats for everyone. Okay.
We actually just got another question just came in from our audience. So just give me a moment and I'll read it off. So let's see. So it's clear that you don't, and this question comes from Stephen. So it's clear that you don't think waterfall is an acceptable development method. But what does that have to do with GTM strategies for the rest of us?
Wow. Well, first of all, not that I don't think it's acceptable. I just think that there are large large problems with it. Most of the practitioners of it would very quickly and fully admit. That said, what does it have to do with go-to-market? I mean, what do any of these product methodologies have to do with go-to-market? And it's a fair question, and if you recall, only 3 slides ago, it's the question I asked Jeremy if I could make a relationship. And the thing is, if you go to market with something that's not solid, you're not going to have fun no matter how smart your marketing strategy is. So my thought is, why don't you start off with a really good product? We're going to review a little bit of that, and then we'll actually get to the real nuts and bolts of go-to-market. So Stephen, hold on to your hat, and thank you for the question.
Awesome.
Go back onto the slides if it's all right.
Yeah, just one quick second. So those of you who are also just, I see we've continued getting more people joining the productmentor.com/live webpage. So those of you, as you're joining, if anyone has any questions at any time, just post the question to the Google moderator that you'll see there on the page, and I will get your question to David. And those in the room, you know, always feel free to ask questions as well. So anyway, with that all said, let me hand it back to you, Dave.
Okay, great, and we'll go back to the presentation. All right, so this you may recognize as the beautiful loop that that Eric Ries is responsible for, if not creating, at least synthesizing. One of his great abilities is, I mean, he's a very smart, shrewd, clever guy. He's sort of Mr. Dude in a startup land these days. And he's all about the MVP and the loop and minimizing the time you go around the loop. And it's all about learning. You know, it's all about sort of taking every thought that you have about a product, turning it into a hypothesis that can be either validated or not, and moving it forward and using whatever I'd say product creation type that you need, i.e. an MVP, to show it. You can do it in paper, you can have a nice prototype, or you can actually code it. And while the closer it is to real, gives you better results because the person doesn't have to imagine as much of what it's really like to be using it, anything that indicates inclination is a step in the right direction, although the closer to real code, or at least faked nicely, is a good thing to be doing. So this is one thing that you're going to hear a lot about, MVPs and lean and the feedback loop, and it's worth remembering. And if you don't own that book, that's probably a good one to buy and read and learn as well. Then we go into customer development. 2 of those books, both white books, extol something called customer development. This is something that Steve Blank and now Steve and Bob Dorff are all about. There's basically 4 big sections: customer discovery, then validation, then creation, then company building. And ironically, his book only concentrates on the first 2, discovery and validation. And it's funny, you know, the last page is like 287, or given that book size, 587. And then it says, if you want information about customer and creation and company building, go ask somebody else, because we're really out of room. And that's okay. Once you get to that point, you're beyond product market fit and you're in a much different place. But the bottom line is, you don't graduate from one section to the next until you've successfully fulfilled what they call exit criteria. And so discovery is about developing and then testing these hypotheses and turning the hypotheses into facts, very much what Eric with his lean startup is all about. Validation is about whether there's a real business model there, one that you can use again and again and that becomes scalable, meaning you can get big and it still is true. Creation is where, you know, you kind of get the B round or the C round and you get a sales force, or depending on how you're marketing, you invest a lot of money into digital and you really grow the business. And that's where the proverbial hockey stick that you've promised investors really needs to come true, or all of a sudden, if you're the CEO, you may well find yourself replaced. Company building, that's when you go from startup into a real big company. Gosh, I guess Facebook did that several years ago. Twitter's kind of sort of trying to do that right now, and it's a beautiful thing when it happens. I've never been in a startup that has made it that far, to be quite honest, and I hope some of you actually have a different experience. But me so far, in my 5 years in startup, not so much. All right, next slide. This is Marty Kagan again. He's the author of Inspired, and he also has a blog on, I think, svpg.com. He's one of the smartest guys I know, and more than that, all the best product people I know, although Jeremy and I haven't had this talk, and he's on my list, just worship the guy. He's doing a lot of really, really good things. I see a little shake here, so I'm wondering if, no, did I say anything bad, or are we okay? Jeremy, all good? Yes?
You are all good.
Okay, excellent. So what you'll find here is Agile put into practice. So you have these sprints, and then you stop, and then you learn, and then you move on. And, you know, at the end of the day, for him, it's called product discovery. And they use MVPs too, and you want to get the product market fit. And the product discovery is the hunt for the right product. And he pushes usability, value, and feasibility, which is something I opened this presentation with. That book is a little old now, but it's great. And his blog is wonderful too, because he'll actually revisit things he had talked about years ago vis-a-vis today's usage and methodologies of terms and conditions, and he'll update stuff. So he's a wonderful guy if you just want to make sense of all of the things that you're hearing out there. So I would strongly encourage you to spend time with him. All right, how do you start? What do you do? Well, basically, there are two ways to go. And actually, I'm going to go even faster. If you have a brand new startup, this is called a lean canvas. And it's really an improvement, in my opinion, on what used to be called a business model canvas. And that's what Steve Blank's latest book is predicated upon. Not this version, but the other. And basically, I think somebody's ringing my doorbell, so I may have to run super quick for a sec. But basically, you go through it. Hi, I'm doing a live presentation, so I can't talk. Sorry. And thank you. Bye. So basically, the deal is this. In order, like starting with customer segments, then going to the problem, then the unique value proposition, and you can kind of, count your way through all of this. You put together a product that is predicated upon a successful answering of these questions. And these questions all become hypotheses too. This is actually created by Ash Maria, who had that book I strongly recommended called Running Lean. And the subtitle I think is great. This is my other daughter. Hello. And the subtitle of the book on Running Lean, it's Iterate from Plan A to a Plan That Works. And I think it's kind of brilliant. What's nice about this, and again, we're still, Stephen, on product development, not on go-to-market, but it ensures you build a product that's really good by sort of foreshortening all of the business plan work that used to be done over weeks and weeks and months, and often by consultants. It makes you do it in about 20 minutes, and it makes you answer all the really, really hard questions in such a way that you feel you can move forward. And it's a really, really good thing to take a look at. This is for brand new companies, startups, or a new company within an established firm. The next one, this is an opportunity assessment criterion, and this also is created by Jeremy Kagan. This is for use in a firm that helps you analyze certain products or projects or even a design change. If you answer these questions well, you can move forward. If you don't answer these questions well, you should not move forward. And offline I can go into sort of how this can be used neatly, etc. You'll notice there's some consistency between the opportunity assessment, these 9 questions, and the 9 sections here. It's not identical, but it's close enough so that there's some consistency. And the more time you spend with each, the more it'll make sense, and it'll give you a higher degree of confidence that you're going in having thought about all of the right things. What you really don't want to do is fall in love with an idea because it's your idea or it's your boss's idea and let their love for the product blind you to the realities of the marketplace. And that's why, frankly, I'm spending as much time as I am on getting the product right. Let's move forward a little bit. Now, what do you do? Well, and this kind of goes into the world of go-to-market, but not quite. You want to understand the problems of a customer. You want to understand how they currently solve the problems. you want, or the problem in particular, you want to understand that there's a big enough market out there so that this is actually worthy and that they'll pay, or there's some way to monetize. And the advertising models are really, really tough unless you have tens and tens of millions of unique viewers. And you want to make sure that this will ultimately deliver a profit, so you have to make sure your cost structure is such that a profit is possible. There's a little bit more on this, and it's asked a different way too. So, is it a problem that really needs to be solved, and does the customer care about it as much as you? Does our product solve this? Yes. So once you understand the product well enough, you have to be sure that the product that you're contemplating or even have out there is working for that particular problem. Do you have a business model that is actually going to work, and have you learned enough to sell? All right, what do you do here? And this is kind of getting into Steve Blank's books. So but truthfully, whether it's Steve's book or Ash's book or even a lot of what Eric was about, is you test the problem, and you can read these little the fine print here. You test the problem so you really understand it. You test the product solution, and that's through the MVP. You verify that it's real, and that's when you get the problem solution fit. And that's really kind of like, I'll say, Act 1 in getting the products out there. Then you get ready to sell, and you start doing the positioning statements. You do a little bit of the marketing collateral and all of this other stuff. You instrument your product in such a way that you can measure it. You also make sure you know what KPIs actually matter. And to have 20 is probably too many, and to have like 6 or 8 that really make a difference is great. And finding out which are the 6 or 8 that really move the needle is a little bit tough, but it's worth it. You start selling, and then you evolve the product, and you develop things a little bit more. You add some new features, and then you determine whether or not you have the product market fit. And if you do, you move forward into those higher order problems that Steve Blank refused to contend with in that latest book, but it's a high class problem, as my old boss used to say, and it's not for the scope of this particular presentation. All right, I think just maybe Steven's going to get his wish, and we can move into the traditional go-to-market stuff. Oh no, one more slide. This is one of the coolest slides I've ever seen in my life, and I hope you guys agree. This is from a paper that was released last year by a guy over at Spotify. He put together it's probably an 8-page document, and it's freely available on the internet. He breaks up the whole product methodology process into 4 parts. First part, you think it. Second part, you build it. Third part, you ship it. And then finally, you tweak it. And it's so simplistic that even I can understand and use it. And I can talk to all of my clients and have them understand it too. And it's a wonderful thing that they've made it so simplistic. I urge you, after you go buy Running Lean from Ash, then you go and download this particular document online, because it is so magnificent and wonderful. You're going to read it, and you're going to nod, and you're going to smile, and your spouse is going to wonder why you're such a geek, and you may or may not choose to answer that particular question, but it's worth its weight in gold. All right, now we can move forward. One more slide. Shh. Okay, I'm online. I can't talk to you. I'll see you in a little bit, my love. Goodbye. All right. Gosh, and I think, Jeremy, am I the only presenter who had his kids live and in person?
I think that just means that you were the most exciting presenter.
Well, there's something. What? Rory's in there too. You can go see her. Little sister wondering where the big sister was. All right. So now we're here. Go to market. Stephen, who has probably walked out and left, or if he's waiting, he can now exhale. Go to market. What are the big questions here? Question number 1, what are we selling and to whom? Question number 2, when is the profitability coming our way? Question 3, what about the value proposition, the unique value proposition, the USP, whatever you want to call it? Then, how do customers learn about it? How are we going to sell it? What needs to happen? And what sort of infrastructure is required? Now, Jeremy, you and I are both over age 30. This kind of sort of sounds like I'm not wrong, am I? Don't answer that. Don't answer that. At any rate, this is kind of like the 3 Ps or the 4 Ps or the 5 Ps. I graduated business school in the 90s, and there were a lot of Ps when I left. and product and price and positioning, and all of those were the usual suspects, and with good reason. But that's what go-to-market is all about today. When you play in the world of go-to-market, you're also going to hear about marketing strategy a lot, and this is an important distinction. So marketing strategy is really about to whom do we sell, what, and how. Go-to-market strategy is a superset. It's something that lives above marketing strategy, and it really talks about how the entire organization comes together to commercialize the product or the service to reach this I'll say customer segment that you've identified, and how you can win out across all of the objectives that you've set, whether it's share, revenue, profitability, downloads, page views, whatever your metric is. All right, we move forward. Back in the day, and I went to my old, Philip Kotler, who's still alive and probably teaching still at Northwestern. He's the godfather of market strategy, at least back then. And what he talked about was, how do you create like a marketing plan, a go-to-market strategy that's going to be completely solid? This is going to look really big, and it's because it is. He breaks up these things, and these presentations, by the way, are what you'll see at, like, Post Cereal or Nabisco. All the big consumer packaged good firms still use marketing plans that are 50, 100, 150 pages long, and it goes into everything. There's a situation analysis where you review the category and you look back at sales, the competitors, the customers, and you sort of name all your planning assumptions. Then you go into your objectives and you talk about what they are. You review the market strategy, you consider the alternatives, who are the customers, what targets you're going after, what competitors are you going after, what strategy are you going to employ. Then there's the actual marketing program, and this is kind of where the 4 Ps, 5 Ps, 7 Ps come in, but pricing, customer acquisition strategy, that's new actually, advertising and promotion, your distribution, your roadmaps, partnerships, value prop, training, service plan, etc. You've got your financials, your monitors, your controls, and then your contingency plan. This thing takes a year and a day to create, and it's the kind of thing that, frankly, you don't want to spend too much time with, particularly in this day and age. So I said, well, what about New School? What's it all about? And this is where I went back to Steve Blank, who spends a lot of time on customer acquisition. He's got 3 ways of looking at customer acquisition. It's about getting your customers, and this is awareness, interest, consideration, and purchase. Then it's about keeping your customers, so you have to interact and retain. And then you want to grow your customers, where you want to get new money from them, with new products and services and bundles and partnerships and whatnot. And this is kind of the guts, if you will, of go-to-market strategy. So I think I have one more slide, and this is an interesting...
So David, I'm going to just jump in there very quickly. We've got a question right now from Mike, so I'm going to hand it over to Mike so that he can ask his question.
Okay, let me see if I can get me here again. All right, cool. Let's talk.
Okay, so my question is, after going through this process and everything looks good to launch, but then you start to see traction immediately dropping, how do you know which way to pivot, based on everything you're talking about?
Mike, can you mute yourself? And then unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, it's kind of a loaded question. And Jeremy, I'm going to have you give your answer after I give mine. But basically, when you see a very large drop in whatever metric that you're looking for, your goal is not necessarily to pivot. You pivot if and only if you have to pivot. What you really want to do is find a way not to have to pivot, because that's very expensive and hard on the team. What you want to do is understand what are the unique drivers for each of your metrics and see what you can do to boost them again. This is where you go into A/B testing or multivariate testing and other techniques that allow you to tweak your web page or your apps or the way you do your customer acquisition or your sign-up strategy or registration flow or whatnot to make sure that whatever metric you're actually thinking about, you're able to improve upon. What you don't want to do is quickly say, oh gosh, we've got the wrong product, we've got the wrong customer segment, and we should actually be going after this group instead of that group. That's really difficult. You do it if you have to do it, but only if you have to do it. And there's an awful lot of work and an awful lot of learning that can be done beforehand. And frankly, and I won't go back to the deck yet, but if you remember maybe 8 slides before, the Lean Canvas talked about what metrics do you need to consider to be successful. What are your objectives? If you think about what goes into what success looks like, and you know what those metrics are, you think about what the drivers are, that's when you're able to kind of get in and figure it out. And you can talk to users about it, and if you've instrumented your product correctly, you can actually see what they're doing, so you don't have to talk to anyone. But typically, it's good to kind of validate or verify what your data findings are before you move forward. It's kind of funny, as I look on my desk here, or my glass living room table, I saw one book that I didn't show, and you'd think I work at a bookstore with all the recommendations I'm doing, but no. Can you guys see this? It's called Web Analytics 2.0, and the guy's name is Avinash Kaushik. He's an evangelist over at Google. He has a consulting practice himself. Everyone I know who runs a big marketing agency these days makes all of their new hires and some of their existing hires read the book before they start. This guy is magnificent, and I'm sure there are 20 other folks from whom you can learn, but I would say after you get this book, then go and get that other book, because it's amazing. It teaches you everything you need to know about analytics, but we're afraid to ask. He goes over the nitty-gritty. He talks to you, not at you, and he's really funny and personable. And I think the funny thing about product people is, because we're highly functional OCD types, we never think we know enough. We never think we're doing the right thing. Part of the virtues of our job is that somebody's going to be mad at you no matter what you do. And so as long as you're doing the right thing for the product, that's all that matters. And you got to be strong. You've got to have thick skin. You got to know who your friends are, and you've got to be nice to your enemies too, because they've got to build your products. Remember, but yes, analytics super important. Hang on a quick sec. I'm going to tell my gals to keep it down. One moment. Hey guys, close the door and please don't be loud.
No problem.
Thank you. All right.
So it looks like we have another question from another person in the room. So let me hand that over to Carlos so that he can ask his question. Carlos.
Right. Please close the door, Rory. All the way.
You're muted, Carlos. Hello, Carlos?
I wish I could read lips.
Or minds. I don't think his lips are moving.
No, I'm actually getting the same problem.
Oh, I hear you now. Okay.
Oh, okay, cool. I was getting the same problem I got the other day, Jeremy. That it's
okay, well, we can hear you now, so if you want to ask your question.
So, yeah, my question was, it seems like you're very up to date on both Lean and Agile and kind of their interpretations and implementations. Have you had to make any adjustments or changes to how you implement these? Because I think that's one of the kind of spirit of the methodologies is that you can tweak them to your own success.
Yes, that is a great question. Not to say that the other questions weren't great questions, but goodness, I would say this, and it's a little bit tricky. I would say that all of these, well, okay. I think that Steve Blank's book, he's a godfather of customer development. He has the most comprehensive, dense stuff you could ever imagine. I've read through every single page, and I've learned a crap ton from him. I've even tried to put it in an Excel sheet, turn it into a checklist. And I've been so overwhelmed that I couldn't even talk to my family for days. I don't think that's necessarily the way to go because it's just too much. But if you're going to get from him something, it's get a theory for how the business model canvas can be used to create hypotheses and turn them into briefs and turn them into sort of testable, verifiable, I'll say gems, if you will, thinking in a kind of Rails sort of way, that you can test and move forward with. He gives you the construct to do almost everything, but he also comes from an enterprise world, so his world is a little bit skewed. Equally, Eric Ries came from like IMVU, and it was a $40 million startup. You know, when he left, I don't know if he remembers just what it was like in the beginning. I think, honestly, if you're going to be dogmatic with Ash's Running Lean. I'm just kind of staring at the book again. This is a great way to go. I don't think anything works perfectly, and I'm not sure that it should. And I think one of the struggles, one of the frustrations is you try to make it work for you and it doesn't. And you kind of feel like, geez, if these are the experts and I'm not getting it, either I'm not smart enough to be in this job, or maybe they're doing something wrong, or the truth of the matter is there's probably something peculiar in a good way about your specific situation that doesn't allow a, you know, apples to apples translation. So what you do is you just try to take the basic tenets and apply them. Now what I find is it's great to have a mentor. In fact, I have a mentor, and that's part of the reason I always took the call from Jeremy to be a mentor for actually several of the folks out there tonight, because it's really good to have somebody to talk to. And frankly, I've got about, I'm going to say, 8 to 10 VP of products or product VPs who I can call on a moment's notice and get help from them when I need them. And that's really important. I mean, product is still very much a new role and an ever-evolving role, particularly here on the East Coast. So if you're feeling like you're not doing it right all alone, don't feel bad. Chances are somebody else has gone through the exact same problem themselves, possibly the day before. And, you know, the titles also are a little bit strange here in product land. You know, there are VPs who are 24 years old, and no offense, but, you know, they've been out of school for a year and they don't know crap. Because how could they? And sure, maybe they've been coding since they were 14, so they've got more technical experience than all of us here tonight. But, you know, when you're live and in the market and you're working for either a one-person company, a startup, or you're working for a, you know, a $500 billion organization, getting the real experience is really what makes the difference for you. And it really doesn't matter where you get it, just as long as you get some. And again, whether you're big or small, you're not going to be expected to know all these things. So get your answers, do the research you can on your own, have some like thoughts, and then, you know, bounce the ideas off of other people. And don't feel ashamed, don't feel shy, don't ever, you know, feel bad to raise your hand. And if you want to raise your hand when no one's looking, like outside of your company, you know, call Jeremy, call me, and I'll give you 5 to 10 people to talk to about any question you possibly could have as a product person.
Cool. We have another question, this time from someone watching the live stream through the productmentor.com/live. They posted a question. This question comes from Anthony. It's a long one, so bear with me as I read it. Do all products lend themselves to an iterative agile workflow? In your experience, are there no products that must pragmatically be launched in big waterfall-style releases? Is it just a matter of framing, thinking of a product in a different way?
You know, I'm going to say that large enterprise products that typically take years, not months, to create often, but not always, have to be created in order to be fully showed. So in some ways, you're sort of taking your faith to build it before you are able to get the real live feedback. But I would say that if you're going to take the spirit of agile or agility, you're going to, I'll say, bombard the process with customers along the way who've been taught how to see the product in an unfinished way, yet who have the tools and the vocabulary to be able to talk about it as if it were more advanced. I think what you have to do is be super careful about who you bring in as kind of alpha and beta testers, and just make sure you're getting enough external exposure and feedback so that you don't get stuck. What you can also do is try to excel. You can create sprints even for waterfall, and then you know, of course, you're bastardizing the form, but that's really what Agile is all about. It's a bastardization of a format that was very pleasing to executives because you could tell them in 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 months, or sometimes 18, this is the product that's going to be there, and it's going to have these features, and then they can go tell their boards what's going on, and then everybody's happy, except the fact that typically what's needed after the 6 or 12 or 18 months is considerably different than what you first started out with, and that sort of process doesn't very gladly accept iteration because it's sort of, you know, the monsters are already learning how to walk and they're hard to reprogram. So I would say no. By no means are there no products that require that can live off Agile and escape from waterfall methodologies altogether, but by and large we're going away from it. But yeah, some products are going to be a little bit more happy with waterfall than others, or some really have to be built in total or near total before they can be supremely realized by an end user. And that's one of the reasons I try to stay away from enterprise.
Cool. I don't have any other questions right now from either side, so we can hand it back to you. But if anyone has a question, whether we see your lovely face at the bottom of the screen or if you're watching the screen.
Enough of my lovely face. Let's get a lovely slide.
Yeah, so if anyone can post a question there. So with that said, let me hand it to you, Dave.
Okay, this is actually the last slide, and what I'm showing you is I have notes here. So you can either read my notes or read the slide, but and I'd like this to be a discussion. So go-to-market strategies that I've observed lately and am impressed with, and I came up with like 10, but I realized I wasn't sure how long this presentation was going to go. So my thought is this. Let's take a look at each, but I would love for this to be interactive, and we can kind of take it one by one. So first off, Google Glass and Google self-driving cars. What's that all about, and what's their go-to-market strategy, etc.? So why don't I kick it off, and then Jeremy, I mean, I guess, do you want to respond and like ask the folks who are in this room if they want to talk about it a bit, or what's the best way? I mean, it's 7:51. You tell me.
We'll just see how it goes. So I'll let you kind of finish your thing. We also have more questions coming in. So
okay. Okay, fair enough. So for Google Glass, and you guys, you can see the presentation now, right? So no matter where I'm moving this on my screen, you're seeing it?
I'm not seeing it, but I'm looking around, and it looks like it is showing. Can you tell me what you see on your screen?
Well, William, how about this? William, will you nod if you can see GTM strategies observed and nothing else? Yes. Okay. So it's working for the masses. Okay. So Google Glass. Now, think about what Google does. So Google's business model is, you know, it's a multi-sided market. They do searches. They enable searches, and they get users. Users are the folks who don't pay them, but just go online to do searches, and in turn they give them ads. So their customers are the advertisers who pay money for the eyeballs, and they just want to grow their business more and more and more. And there are a lot of reasons for it. And they're all commercial. Now, Google Glass and self-driving cars, you wouldn't think they have a lot to do with one another, but I actually contend that they do. So Google Glass all of a sudden takes data acquisition and, you know, gosh, instead of looking to see how you do your searches and, you know, with all of their various products, how you interact with you know, other folks digitally throughout your day, you're now going to be viewed, and all of the data that comes by, you know, goes to Google as well. So Google Glass becomes a way of sort of expanding their knowledge of you and of the world, and in a very kind of cool and arguably insidious way. Self-driving cars. Well, if I had a self-driving car, for the first week I'd make sure that it really worked, and then once I developed some trust and confidence in it, I would start doing some other things, including going online more. So all of a sudden Google has, with these two products, created two very ingenious ways of getting more data to feed their business model. Now, what does this have to do with go-to-market strategies? Stephen is wondering yet again, and I'll tell you. So Google Glass started off as this very geeky thing. And I'm not sure if you guys have known this, and maybe, Jeremy, I'll just ask you because you're the biggest picture on my screen. Are you aware that next fall, 2014, Google has not one, not two, but 3 different lenses for Google Glass and 2 sunglasses?
I'm a bad example for that, but I am more than aware of Google Glass coming up.
All priced at about $200, $275, which is about how much a nice pair of glasses from Moscot or LA Eyeworks cost. Actually, probably half what glasses at LA Eyeworks costs. So they're making it modern. So they're moving from geek chic to actual chic. And I think that's a really neat thing. And rather than just saying guys or gals who are going to be getting glasses and so they need prescriptions, it's also going to folks who just want to get a different look. And those are 2 very, consumer-friendly ways of doing it. So they actually made a very interesting sort of pivot in the way that they were marketing. I think that's super smart. Then let's look at Nest. And Nest was founded by 2 developers who came from Apple, if I recall. And now that they're part of Google, as of a week ago or 2. But all of a sudden they wanted to say, geez, I mean, everybody knows that these are sort of electronic or digital thermostats for your home, and that this is sort of the advent of the internet as a thing and the smart home. But what's interesting about what they did is they use simple design and they use color, somewhat reminiscent of the way Apple, first did their original iPad or iMac rather, and they've done some really clever things about putting users in control and sort of allowing the kind of folks to self-select themselves. My next door neighbor, actually the guy who lives on the floor above me, has Nest, and he becomes an evangelist for it. And he's the kind of guy who cares about nature and the world, just like most of us. And it's kind of a beautiful thing, and it works really nicely. Because of the time, I'm not going to spend more moments on Nest, but then we've got Uber. Uber is really interesting. They know that the customer problem was, geez, I can't get a cab when I need it. Sometimes the cab smells. The cab driver doesn't know what's going on. My cab experience is not great. I feel bad, and I'm willing to pay 1.5 times the standard cost of a cab to get me somewhere. Give me a feeling of confidence, and I will pay a little bit more. And that's what they've done. They have used, so they know that they'll pay a little bit more. It's all been digitized, and in fact, you don't even have to sort of do much transaction with the driver because most of that's taken care of. There's an online review, so if the driver doesn't get a good review, he doesn't get to drive much more. And this is a kind of service that the people who are happy with are able to tell their friends about. So you get this whole evangelization thing happening too, and that's really smart. And I know that recently Uber has gotten into, did I say Goober? Half Google, half Uber. Uber has gotten themselves into trouble with their demand pricing, and they had some pretty crazy prices around the Christmas time, holiday season. That wasn't very smart of them, and they've since recovered. They've also got a neat deal with the limo business, so they're able to sort of maximize utilization of all the folks who own fleets. They've been very clever. I know they've got some issues with the medallion companies, but I think they're in a very good position to win. And then finally, we'll go with Netflix. Netflix has decided it knows enough about your movie habits and your TV watching habits to come up with, 76,000 different types of genres. and it knows a kind of what people do online. You talk about big data used well. Well, Netflix really knows what to do with their data, such that they can actually now invest not tens, but hundreds of millions of dollars into programming for shows that otherwise would never see the light of day there. You know, they know that people are going to binge watch or marathon, and they know what kind of shows are going to work, and they can go to directors and producers and say, guys, we're going to give you this budget, and we're going to give you 100% creative license to do whatever you want. And remember, every director or producer worth his or her right of salt earn rights to use, not twice, but most of their entire careers. So the idea of doing something new and doing something with complete creative license and knowing that there are going to be a crap ton of folks watching, that's wonderful. You don't have to worry about how many theaters are going to take your film or whether you have to go indie or not. This is a winning strategy, and they've done it with House of Cards, they've done it with Orange is the New Black, and there are a whole bunch of new shows coming out on the slate. I'm actually good friends with the executive producer of House of Cards, and he talked about what a joy it was working with Netflix, and he's not easily pleased. And so I know that's a winning strategy too. And by the way, House of Cards can be advertised every time you get a video coming in the mail through their standard way, and then when you go online to go to Netflix, you can see kind of interstitials for it. So they have really mastered the whole go-to-market strategy in a wonderful way. I tried to pick 4 companies who are in technology, because after all, most of us are in technology or media or some combination. And I hope you were able to get a good deal of knowledge, or at least a couple of giggles from this presentation. Jeremy, I believe you said there were a few questions, but we're at 8 o'clock.
Yep, definitely. So let me. So we got a bunch of questions from the people watching the live stream. So the first question I've got for you is from John. So let me read it. Both these questions are long, so I will do my best once again. I want to print out a product prototype on a 3D machine and get people's and let people give me feedback and continue to improve. I get confused between marketing and go-to-market. I want to get feedback, but I also want to start cultivating customers. What should I do?
Well, I'm not super huge on 3D, but I'm not sure that would matter in answering this particular question. So I think it may help to be able to kind of separate certain words and their respective definitions from the overall process. So, I mean, we're all in sales, whether we want to be or not, 24/7. And every single interaction is an interview, and feedback is, you know, is a never-ending thing, and it's something that that product people, good product people, really have to want very, very badly and accept, even when it's not necessarily desired. Marketing is something you want to think about even when you're developing and prototyping, because it's one of the things you have to consider in advance. And one of the reasons that the Lean Canvas or the business model canvas even are so helpful is because they force you to consider those questions from the outset. And so I don't know if it necessarily does you well, John, to sort of like put a hold on marketing because you're not ready for it necessarily. I think what you have to do is just keep it in the back of your head and always be considering marketing ideas, even if you're not ready necessarily to go to market. The prototype can be what they call the MVP, and you need to be going to customers or would-be customers with it to understand what they like, what's working, what's not working. And gosh, why don't you supplement that that answer, Jeremy?
I think I would just add. I think the one part I would add, and you gave a really good answer, is when you're thinking about an MVP and you're thinking about testing different ideas, you don't always have to actually create the physical product. When you're designing an MVP, you always should be trying to find whatever that cheapest way is to validate your riskiest risk. And that's how you should always be approaching it. Not to say that that might not be a valid MVP at some point, but you can get a lot from wireframes and storyboards and talking to people and simple landing pages. There's a lot of different ways you can test the idea, short of the expense and the time of kind of generating something 3D also. With that said, we've got another question from, I think if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, Sagar. And Sagar's question is, should one reiterate a product even when it's doing good? For example, numbers like DAU look good. On the other hand, what triggers should be seen as one needs to start looking? Sorry about that. Let me restate it. On the other hand, what triggers should be seen as one needs to start looking at iterations? And in either case, should go-to-market be the same during each launch? It was a little bit disjoint the way I asked that question, but I think the idea got across.
Maybe. We'll see. My thought is this. Iteration is a non-stop thing that you're doing. I mean, as a product manager, again, regardless of how senior or junior you are on that totem, your job is to make a great product, and the product is never done. So the concept of being through with iterations is so foreign to me. I don't even know how to respond. It's never done. It's like a relationship. You're always trying to build it and grow it, and even if it in and of itself it's good, you still got to keep going. And so my thought is, you're never done with iteration. I can't believe it. Rory, come here. Here's the phone. Talk to mommy.
I'm going to take that moment because I know a whole bunch of people just asked that question about the question I just stated. DAU stands for Daily Active Users. So I just got flooded with a whole bunch of people asking me that very question. So hopefully that helps.
Yes, actually, I think I was hoping I had that right. And in terms of metrics, again, there's a certain point at which you start to go from finding the product market fit to actually optimizing, and you're never done optimizing. I mean, and actually you, Jeremy, given the fact that you work at a company who has 20+ million page views every month, if not every day, you're always trying to tweak it up and always try to get it back. And there's certain things that are going to go up and down throughout the day, and you have to develop trends so you know when to get nervous and when not to get nervous, and you develop an appreciation for things like cyclicality and whatnot, so on Thursday nights certain things are going to happen or not happen, and it's actually okay. But you have to create baselines, and again, this book, Web Analytics 2.0, is so incredibly helpful in helping you know how to approach it all. Why don't you supplement that a little too, just given the fact that you are a data geek and a beautiful one at that.
I'm beautiful. We should just end right on that. Let's just call it a night right there. Yeah, it looks like we don't have any other questions from the room or elsewhere. Is there anything else, David, that you wanted to add?
No, just thanks so much. And as you could hear in the background, that my daughter is upset that I've kept her enclosed in a little capsule watching TV for the past hour and 7 minutes. So she's telling my wife. So I'm going to be in some deep stuff later. So if you see me and you can help me out, please do. But otherwise, this was fun. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, it's just always remember to poke the holes in so they can still get some air.
Indeed. Next time I'll remember.
Yeah.
Next time.
Cool. And so basically in closing, just to let everyone know who's been joining the live stream, as always, we'll post the presentation to our SlideShare. And again, I just want to do a special thank you to David Shoenberger, Product Innovation Specialist, for today's discussion on go-to-market strategy. And a big thank you from me, Jeremy Horn, the product guy, and to everyone else who joined today and from the Product Mentor. And also don't forget, if you're interested in being a product mentor, like David, and meet product people and work with product people of all sorts, we're always looking for new mentors. Please visit theproductmentor.com and sign up today. And also, if you're looking to find a product person, or you're looking to fill a product person job, or vice versa, we have our very own free for everyone involved job board, and you can do that at theproductjobs.com. And with that said, bye everybody.